Hi, I'm Jasmine Cox. Today I'm joined by Lynn Wagner, and now let's talk textiles. Welcome everyone to Talking Textiles. I'm Jasmine Cox of the Textile Technology Center at Gaston College, and I'm a member of ATA. The goal of this podcast is to get to know the wide variety of positions and markets that make up the advanced textiles industry. We will be talking to professionals in different roles throughout this series to help inspire the next generation of textile professionals and anyone interested in learning more about others' journeys in the world of textiles. ATA offers advanced textiles content throughout the year, including the upcoming Advanced Textiles Expo 2026, taking place November 3rd through 5th in Orlando, Florida. Connect with industry professionals and discover the latest innovations that will drive your business forward. Visit textiles.org/events to learn more. Our featured guest is Lynn Wagner, Senior Research Manager at the University of Maine. Welcome, Lynn.
Hello and welcome. Thank you for having me, Jasmine.
Thank you for being our guest. And so maybe start off with your background, where you're from, and then we'll jump into a few questions.
Sure. Born and raised in Buffalo, New York, but spent the majority of my life on the West Coast between California and Washington State. And now I am living in beautiful Maine, vacation land, Maine, where I am currently heading up the Fiber and Specialty Textile Research Lab at the University of Maine in Orono. And it's the first time I've ever worked in academia. My 40-ish years in industry has been working with manufacturing in research and development on the raw material side. I've been on the brand side of things, doing research and development and working with designers. So I've come pretty full circle on my experience, and now it's focusing on research and heading up a really esteemed set of scientists and engineers here at the university.
That is amazing. I love your background. It's very diverse, especially for this amazing laboratory. So, if you could maybe go a little bit more in depth and describe your current role and what your research focus is at the University of Maine.
I'd be happy to. Textiles comes in many shapes and forms. Through my career, it started with fashion. It worked its way through performance textiles, and now I'm really facing a lot of industrial applications and specialty applications for military end use. Department of War is our original sole sponsor to fund the FASTR, what we call the FASTR Lab, the Fiber and Specialty Textile Research Lab. And they have a division to expand from our current composite center here at the university, what they call the Advanced Structures Composite Center. The brainchild of a predecessor who was focused on composites for many years, yet had a textile background and had an aha moment thinking, let's implement more textiles in our composites. Mm-hmm. So what we do at ASCC and implementing the FASTR Lab is textiles that can be created into composites. And, defining composite is two or more items that make something. So our yarn could be a composite of two different components. I'd like to refer our lab as an innovation chain or a mini vertical mill, because we have scientists that are way upstream that will create polymers or blend polymers that are either a traditional polymer or something that's novel that could be a filler that has a performance or a different unique attribute. And we could make our own pellets. We can melt spin, and then we can ultimately knit or weave the product. So it's a full circle innovation chain that creates a lot of unique, novel products
Yeah.
used in the textile industry.
Yes. And thank you for explaining that definition of composites because I feel like everyone's definition is a little bit different.
Yes, I would agree because before I started here, I didn't realize I was creating composite fabric when I was upcycling textile waste into a new reusable circular product. So it's like, oh yeah, that's a composite because I'm using more fabric and chopped up fibers and making it into a new fabric.
Exactly. And so learning more or hearing about your capabilities at FASTR Lab, could you talk about your approach and what makes this lab so unique compared to maybe other research institutions out there?
Yeah, there's a lot of crossover within the textile institutions. Sadly, we've lost some institutions, that focus on textiles, and it's super exciting to have this lab because University of Maine doesn't even teach textiles.
Which is
So,
so crazy to
which
have
is
this
really,
program.
yeah, so however, it is gained momentum and caught attention to our, university deans and head of departments that it's like, you have something going here because textiles is not arts and crafts. It is a specialty science and technology and includes mathematics. So it really is a STEM subject in sheep's clothing, I think. No
Yeah.
pun intended with the sheep and the wool.
Yes.
So what separates us from other universities, in addition to that, not having a curriculum, we have the Advanced Structures Composite Center. So we do have a huge infrastructure of 30 years of working in specialty materials. And it could be fiberglass, it could be carbon, and it could be, wood composites as well. And we're able to, what I had previously discussed, the innovation chain can go right into the next phase of composites for the specialty industry, whether it's aerospace or space. There are some universities that focus on textiles that are for wearable, not wearable technologies, but wearable clothing. And most of our textiles are not worn as clothing, like close to skin. It could be worn as a sensor, or it could be worn as a technology. But the majority is not to be worn, and it's to be used in as a functioning part in a bigger picture. Most times we don't know what the end use is.
Yes, and that kind of leads to my next question is how does FASTR Lab collaborate with industry and with the government and those partners to really help translate those concepts into an actual usable application?
Yeah, the commercial industry and the Department of Defense, they work very differently. As far as collaboration, we have a limited time to be able to speak to our defense industry on what's going on. They usually direct to us what they're seeing that they need improvement on. So the collaboration may be between our research and our findings and our reportings. And then there's some dialogue. Otherwise, we're pretty independent and face it as a research, not knowing what's good, what's bad, and reporting on it to get feedback. As far as commercial collaborations. We have, the word is out that we are available to do work for the industry, other industries. And so because we have unique machines and the talent we have, we get calls to collaborate and say, hey, I'm looking for, can you do this? We have this problem. Can you have a solution? So there is more collaboration. There's a lot more seeking information of what we can do. A lot of times it is still proprietary.
Yes.
So it can be at a surface level, and once we have an NDA signed, it's more open and below the surface. But that's what excites me is when we can start getting below the surface and start like, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? Or a lot of times it may be price sensitive, and there are times that it's not price sensitive. It's like,
Mhm.
we just need to know, can it be done? And what's the performance? And then we can go from there.
And I like to think of that as like applied research. That's when it gets exciting.
Hmm.
When you're able to dig deeper and really start to find answers to those problems and, come up with those solutions.
Exactly. And a lot of times there's upfront, there's not a lot of time based on whether we're working on a proposal to get a grant funding or a customer is. So it's like, I don't have a lot of time. Can you do this or not? Or, hey, I'm calling you back. I liked what you said. Can we go further into
Mhm.
that, the depths of that conversation? And so it's a unique dance
Yes.
that we all have, and we're not knowing what can be said, what can't be said. And for example, recently, we had a customer saying, give us a quote on what you think it would take to make this item. And we're a soft funded facility. So it's like, well, we don't really have time, but we can squeeze things in here and there. And then it's like, we really do need to spend probably 4 months straight on this before we can really even tell you if it's done.
Mhm.
Oh, and they're like, that's no problem. If we get funding, we'll have millions of dollars.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, well, in that case,
Yes.
so and then you may get a feasibility study, opportunity. And if it doesn't work, then you walk, away from it. But it's, you don't really know about these opportunities until you really you're vulnerable, and you have to say, we really do need more time. It's not like black and white saying, yeah, it can be done. Well, if it can be done, someone else is doing it already.
Yes.
I'm excited about this one opportunity if it goes forward, because we will be able to kind of roll our sleeves up and look at it, the challenge from many angles and multiple machines.
Yes. And that makes sense. I mean, you guys are working with and at so many tech readiness levels. You're way upstream at like a TRL1 all the way up to, hey, this is feasible and something that's you can commercialize.
Exactly. And our listening audience, if they have a textile background, they know what it takes to set up a loom. You can't just set up a loom and then move on and set it up and cut it off and move it. So it's like sacrificial. Your sacrificial warp,
Yes.
that you want to do as much as you can when you have it on.
Yep.
So it's an interesting challenge.
It is. And sometimes these new materials, it's not your standard polyester, nylon that already exists. Like you said, if it was, someone's already doing it. These are things that you really have to spend a lot of time on, and you're studying it to see what it takes to get it to that next level. And so that brings me to my next question for you is what are some emerging trends and technologies that you're seeing? I know you guys have a lot of proprietary information, but if there's anything that you can share with emerging fiber and textile technologies that you think can have a significant impact on the industry in the next decade or so, what are those technologies, if any, that you can share? Or maybe it's not a specific technology or a polymer type, but maybe it's a new trend like sustainability or
Mm.
whatever it is.
Well, speaking of sustainability, I would have to stay on that horse and say biosynthetics or bio-based
Mm-hmm.
fibers, cellulosics, hemp.
Mm-hmm.
Hemp is a big, all parts of the plant can be used in composites, such as, whether it could be resonated and melted
Mm-hmm.
too, even though it's really an interesting concept because when you think of cellulose, you don't melt cellulose. But if you combine it, if it's like a flower, if your hemp is a flower or if your paper product is ground down into a flour consistency can be an additive
Mm-hmm.
to the melt spun product.
Yeah.
And that can vary too. So, there is a lot of, still a lot of polymer used, but slowly integrating the bio base, whether it's algae or hemp or good old cotton, can be used. I would say that's still a hot topic. I think as far as emerging technologies, there's a lot into the technology itself as far as automation and manufacturing the product. So there's new ways of using traditional raw materials. So you have traditional ways, but in maybe a new way of creating it. And that new way will also allow you to have quicker failures and
Yeah.
quicker and data to measure within that automated machine or more smarter machine that the data can be extracted from it so you could see the blips in what happened when and why. I think that's going to help the textile industry in the future as far as emerging, and it all comes down to that digital thread.
Yeah.
The digital thread is all over in all of these industries, but the data and the digital thread is going to make an impact for sure. The advanced textiles, like the architecture, too. Because of the advancement of the machines, there's going to be like more three-dimensional items woven or knit. And whether they're automated, like all one at a time from start to finish, or if they're in like a convergent production line.
Mm-hmm.
Convergent manufacturing is definitely the trending also as far as in manufacturing. So it's based on technology, but on fundamentals of textile
Yes,
concept.
exactly. Like those basic concepts never change, even though you're automating the equipment or making it more high tech. Weaving is weaving, right?
Yes, exactly. But weaving one layer is very different from weaving 10 layers
Yes, very different.
with the Z direction, the orthogonal. And it's just it's very, very interesting because then you know what you're incorporating into your weaving? You're going to have to then send it to an X-ray to make sure the inside is woven the way you wanted it. You can't just cut it crosswise and say, hey, yeah, it looks good. There's no gaps or there's no errors. But there's a whole new business out there for these textiles and having to verify
Mhm.
the quality that you don't see.
Yes. Yeah. And that's really interesting point because you discuss not only fiber and material innovation with people kind of focusing on natural fibers and these alternative applications that we never really thought of, but then you're also working parallel with industry on new technologies itself to produce these composites and to produce these structures and get that out to scale. And so that brings me to my next question on working alongside academia versus government and what that looks like in this research environment at your lab. I know with two different audiences or clients, their focus can be on different things. And you touched on it a little bit, but I would love to hear you talk about that a little bit more.
Well, the first thing that comes to mind, which I am directly every day faced with, is students. So working with academia, and what's wonderful about the Advanced Structure Composite Center, and through the years, it operates like its own entity right here on campus. Even though my health benefits and my paycheck says University of Maine, we have our own little business concept that we bring business in and have our own finance department. We have our own admin, research admin that supports us. So we have that section, but we have the workforce development, which say students are first here.
Mm-hmm.
They're not only first, but they may become our future customer too, because when we train them up here, they're out working in textile related or composite related manufacturing. And then they come back and say, I want to see the new FASTR Lab. And hey, maybe we can do business. So that is a common, and it's really exciting for me to see, because I remember when I was in university, I don't remember having opportunities like that to work, like at our own little, like a manufacturing facility right on campus. So it's really great to see and to be able to experience and share workforce training. And it empowers the students, and they're pretty left alone to work on their own and problem solve and self-manage their time and present to, we have, over 100 people working here. We have opportunities to present PowerPoint decks to our center. They're acknowledged with, safety awards and other appreciations, and they're recognized. And then as far as professors, being involved, because they will, have their grad students that they sponsor and that are working here at the center. So it's really valuable for us to have the professors involved and exposed to what we're doing. And perhaps maybe they have been traveling somewhere else and saw new machines that they thought, they would refer to us that maybe we should look at. So it's a full circle from professor, engineer, scientists, students, from graduate to undergrad, and we all, collaborate together too and problem solve.
Yeah, it sounds like a really cool think tank.
Yeah, and then when you're working with someone and then you get an announcement inviting you to, go and see them, watch them defend their thesis or something, which is really, it's a great support mechanism and witness to all their hard work and their passion to the project.
Exactly. It's a full circle moment, I bet. And so that leads to kind of our next topic of discussion, which it seems like you guys have a lot of priorities, right? If you think about maybe the type of technology and equipment that you have in your lab, if you think about maybe what are the research projects that you're going to tackle. Is it a faculty student project? Is it a DOW funded initiative? Is it a different grant? How do you determine what's that priority and what you invest your time, effort, and funds into?
I had that conversation this morning with one of my team members, as far as priorities, because we are facing the facts of having more industry projects. And, it can't be it's somewhat a blend of first come, first serve.
Mm-hmm.
Who's the, what's the budget? What is the timeline? Of course, our priority is with our NATIC,
Yeah.
our sponsor, they're our biggest sponsor, and we wouldn't be here without them. So they are for sure. the priority. And then machine availability
Hmm.
and technologist, scientist availability. So it's another dance to figure out who's first, what's next, and logical. Like again, the weaving. What can we weave on the loom that's already set up?
Hmm.
And do at least do some trials with it may not be the right size carbon or yarn, but we can at least get a sneak peek on does it work. So as far as priority goes, it's availability of machines and operator. The sponsor, of course, is weighs very heavy. It's almost you have to have your own rubric to
Yeah.
figure out who's next and where and what's working because maybe something is down and then you have to pivot to another project while you're waiting for a part or the technician to fix the machine. On a daily or weekly basis, it could change, but we do make the priority our Natick and then trickle down from that as far as what we promised.
Yeah. And
Mhm.
just for the listeners, just for their knowledge, how large is your team? So your technicians and specialists that are working on the actual equipment.
Directly, direct reports would be four, and they all have their expertise in certain areas in the polymer science
Hmm.
upstream, and there's a few, and then downstream is the actual weaving and knitting and melt spinning.
Yeah.
So it's right now there's a big demand for weaving and knitting. So our sole person operator and designer is busy.
Very busy.
It's busy. And so we talked about it this morning. It was like, yes, we do need to, and we do have our students to help, but every semester it changes. Their schedule changes. So their
Mhm.
availability changes. And then with summer, are they going to have an internship full time somewhere or are they going to be here full time? So we're working on that and with our schedule for the summer. Do we need to, hire somebody to operate and assist and even be trained? So
Right.
the other thing about ASCC is and because we're self-funded, is some projects get slower as they wind down,
Yes.
and then others are busier. And because we have a big talent pool, individuals can be trained
Hmm.
to use other machines and think methodology. It's like, okay, I get how this works. And it's a nice perspective, a different perspective, because someone maybe have a different engineering degree than a design degree. And then it's like, what if, oh, we can be more efficient this
Hmm.
way. How
Hmm.
about, have you thought of this other one? So it's a nice synergy to be able to use other people outside of my direct reports, just in case we need to ramp up our productivity.
Yes. And it seems like because like you said, you're kind of housed in a university setting, but you operate as a separate entity or a small business. So you have to keep going all throughout the year, whether it's summer break or not. You guys still have, responsibilities and, research to get out.
Exactly. Yeah, we don't have the summers off, nor do you. Do
I
you?
don't. I don't. So I can relate.
Exactly. It's like the benefit of working the summers is you have better parking, right? And
Yes.
you have less students to look out after when you're trying to pull out of the parking lot.
Yeah. Or even if you think about the lab, you don't have, this class is coming through, you have more time and it's just a little bit more safe, I guess.
Exactly. It is quieter, but you still have to work.
Yes. Yes. I can relate to that. So, how do you all decide, what innovations you're going to pursue next? What's on that next thing? Like, what's the next big thing? And how do you decide, hey, we're going to tackle this? I know you talked about how Natick, of course, is a huge pusher of what you guys work on. But outside of that, how do you figure out, hey, let's put a little bit more time and effort into this or this new polymer or
Mhm.
this new fabric?
You have to be creative and finding a way how you can wiggle into someone's proposal. And seriously, there it all comes around somehow. You're exposed to a new technology and you're like, I want to work on that. You read up, you read the papers, you do your research, and it's like, well, how? And then because every 6 months or so for Natick, we get refreshed with,
Mhm.
new tasks. So then it's like, aha, now's the time we can try to pivot
Yes.
and implement and get going on the research. Or based on your knowledge and your exposure to things that you kind of want to work on, and you have a customer coming in asking for help, and it's like, I think I can apply what I learned about, or I just attended a webinar on this machine,
Mhm.
or walked a show and saw this, or listened to a presentation at a show. And then pitch your idea to the customer and have it be in a way that, and of course it would, certainly wouldn't pitch something that wouldn't be successful. But it's amazing how opportunities surface with
Yes.
what's going on out there. Just last week, someone had called me for an automated process. And I'm like, I don't think we do it in the FASTR Lab, but let me check down in the greater center. And wouldn't you know it? Yes, we do. I grabbed that team. We got on
Mhm.
a call, had a more meaningful conversation because they're working on a proposal. They have a tight deadline. They're
Mhm.
trying to find someone who can be worthy of partnering with. And it's like, we're showing our initiative. And, yes, we can do it, but our new machine is not going to have exactly 100% of what you're working on. So then we talk to the the company that makes that machine, and it's
Mhm.
like, can you implement, so we can be competitive in this bid? Oh yeah, we can. But we don't
Mhm.
really know much about that section. And and then I'm like, well, I know a lot about that section. I can help you get past the goal line if you need if you need any more insider help, because they're
Mhm.
mechanical engineers, not textile people, and it's like,
Exactly.
okay, you get your textile person who has their subject matter expert and can apply it to a mechanical engineer who can convert your processing to their a new need. And then all of a sudden you have a patent.
Exactly. There you go.
Just like that. It's so easy.
Yeah, it's so
But
easy.
so you just have to be open, have your ears and eyes open and not live life and work in tunnel vision. And
Yes.
because someone who you just met today, you're going to now see them every day and go, how did I not know you? Because I run into you all the
Yeah,
time.
at every industry event now, or
Exactly. Yeah. So it's like, it just collect your data, and someday it'll be knocking on your door and your learnings, and you'll apply them.
yes,
So it's the
it
beauty
all
of learning.
exactly. And it that kind of segues into our next kind of topic, which is for students. I mean, we have a lot of student listeners. We have a lot of maybe university staff and faculty that listen to this podcast. And you mentioned something really important when you talk about working in teams and collaboratively. I always think about textiles and especially emerging technologies like this. It's interdisciplinary. I'll meet students that may be in that silo mindset that are, I only want to do design, I only want to do weaving, I only want to do engineering. And with a facility like this, you can kind of combine all of that into a really awesome career and an awesome job. So, what are some skills or areas of expertise that would be most helpful for students that are entering into this industry, whether it is with Natick or DOW, or if it's with the composites or nonwovens? I mean, there's so many intersections in our industry.
If we only knew when we were students, how to maneuver. I think you have to, they definitely have to act like a sponge when they're exposed to other professionals, whether it's their teacher, whether it's their peers, and whether it's their employers. Learn about as much as you can, because I remember early on in my degree, my working experience, you're in a team environment with disciplines from throughout Fortune 100 company, and you're like, what do I need to know about packaging, or what do I need to know about duties and tax? It's like, yes, you do need to know, because someday you will be faced with that. You're sensitive to costing,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
when you're in the work, when you're out there, the customer says, how much is it going to cost? And you're going to need to know how much is it going to cost or how to reduce that cost. So you have to be either more efficient or change up raw materials. So you have to, again, that open up the tunnel vision, open up, be the 180, and ask questions, network. People remember you. People want to teach each other. If there's as far as student goes, and a working seasoned engineer or scientist, they will stop and they will help you. Networking and building relationships face to face, handshake to handshake, and through LinkedIn, or that in that social realm, it's important. And not forget to follow up and really develop that. Or even if there's anything related, you can forward information to them and say, thinking of you, thought you might want to read this, especially, now with the generational exit and the incoming, there's so much that each generation can teach each other,
Yes.
you know, um, and it's like, take to the students out there, take advantage and try to learn as much as you can and teach what you can to help your mentor. Also, everyone is always in a position to learn.
Exactly. And I think that's great advice for students that are listening in, because there's a lot of misconceptions when it comes to your first job in the industry. You know,
Right.
I,
And
yeah, I would say to my students, they may come in and I want to work for a brand and I want to do color development. And it's
mhm,
so narrow that they miss those opportunities, like you said, for networking, for being a sponge, for learning all of those obscure things
right.
that they need.
Yeah, and the other thing is, you don't know what you don't know. If you think you want to be a colorist and there's an opening for something else, interview, because maybe that person who's interview, they know maybe there's going to be a position for a colorist opening. At least you're meeting someone on the inside.
Mm-hmm.
Take it, do whatever it takes to get a person to person interview, or now, or, a conference call interview. It's so important to be able to articulate who you are. People, employers want to know who this person is. Can they finish a sentence? Are they passionate about what they do? Do they have insight, and are they inspired? There's a lot of things you can't train, and the
Mm-hmm.
passion is one of them. And it's like, you could tell if, the person on the resume, the person's resume could be very impressive, yet not really a cultural fit,
Exactly.
or, the cultural fit, or maybe they just don't seem to be motivated other than being bookwork, into the
Hmm.
books. You have to have that well-rounded, try to be well-rounded. And if you're not, do what it takes to do that.
Yes.
Take a class or volunteer and meet people, and, just be more social if that's what you're lacking, you're social. And the other thing is don't be afraid to fail. The pe you know the a lot of next generations were what I call like the trophy generations. Everyone got a trophy, and everything they participated in. It's like you got to work. This is work. You got to work hard, and things are not going to come to you for free. You
Yeah.
got to work hard, and you can fail, and that's okay. Failing is learning. You have to, what they say around here is just fail fast and learn from it.
Yep.
It's okay, and be honest and say, "Yep, I did it." Because I know when I was young, it was hard to admit that I was made a mistake.
Well, that is really great information. And I think students sometimes can get caught up in the academics and the classroom that they miss those soft skills and other things that are needed. And so, my last question would be your advice for that next generation of textile researchers, because I come across a lot of students that enjoy innovation. They enjoy, tinkering and working in a lab, and maybe they don't want to go into sales, or maybe some of those more less creative parts of the industry. And so, how can students best position themselves for these innovative roles to become this kind of next generation of thought leaders?
I would say you need to be willing to start from the bottom and work up. And again, learn as you go. The students may go down one path, allow themselves to go down another. Especially when you're dealing with innovation, because one innovative idea can lead to another, and before you know it, you have a very novel idea that maybe, that you can apply it to in a unique way. So that would add value.
Mhm.
Because we're all reading the same trade journals and going to the same webinars. We're all hearing the same thing. But again, it's like be an individual and not follow the crowd, but think, what if you did it a little different? Here's the facts. Here's this functioning item, but what if you used another raw material or another different process or a different end use, or even industry?
Mhm.
A lot of the products that are out as consumer products, I think at one time they could have been innovated for a military application, and then it got morphed into a household product.
Yes.
And a lot, you can cross over, and a lot of industries work in silos. So they don't know what other industries are doing. So you may want to attend a webinar or a conference that is totally different from your industry to get a whole new perspective. And then you're like, oh, I can add that to this other industry. And no one, and I'm going to take the credit. You know,
Get that
I'm going to
patent,
be
right?
novel. I'm going to look like this is not that you're boastful or anything, but it's just applying a skill that you can, again, your applied science,
Mhm.
it's your applied crossover to a new product
Yeah,
and twisting it a little bit or not. But the end use would be different. So I think it's just being just open to all the different stimuli and product out there, and follow your gut feeling. That I think that's a strong drive is, your intuition and your passion. And if you believe in yourself and what you're doing, you'll be successful.
agreed. That's a great,
Mhm.
high note to end this podcast on. I want to thank you, Lynn, for your time and your expertise and sharing a little bit about your journey and your amazing FASTR Lab at the University of Maine. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of ATA Talking Textiles. ATA is a not-for-profit association representing the international specialty fabrics marketplace. Learn more about the events, workshops, and webinars ATA hosts throughout the year at textiles.org/events.